The research station Wisdom's Edge hung in the cold vacuum like a metallic spider, its sensor arrays stretched toward the lifeless rock below. What had once been New Terra Colony was now nothing more than abandoned ruins and radiation signatures that made our instruments click nervously. Another fascinating day studying the extinct, Dr. Zefak muttered, adjusting his lab coat with the air of someone who considered himself the galaxy's foremost expert on dead civilizations. His 4 eyes gleamed with that particular smugness that only came from tenure and too many research grants, though I suppose calling humans fascinating is rather generous. Captain Borlox shifted uncomfortably in his command chair, the old soldier's instincts never quite at ease around abandoned worlds. The preliminary scans show no life signs, Doctor. Just debris and those structures they called buildings. Primitive architecture, Zefak sniffed, pulling up holographic displays of the ruined settlements. Look at this construction. Metal and concrete. They actually used physical materials instead of energy matrices. It's almost charming, in the way a child's drawing might be charming. The lift doors hissed open and tech specialist Grimm practically bounced onto the bridge, his young enthusiasm making the seasoned crew members wince. Doctor, Captain, you need to see this. I found something incredible in Sector 7. Borlox's expression darkened. Define incredible, specialist. In my experience, incredible findings on dead worlds usually involve things that try to kill you. Oh no, sir. It's much better than that. Grimm's excitement was infectious enough to make even Zefak look up from his data tablets. I found a human preservation chamber, a real functioning cryogenic pod. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Functioning. Zefak's voice carried the tone of someone who had just been told their lottery numbers came up. After 500 years, the power cell is nearly depleted, but the chamber itself is intact. Imagine the research possibilities. We could actually study a living human specimen. Borlox frowned, his military training kicking in. Grim. These things went extinct for a reason. Their own weapons destroyed their colonies. What makes you think waking one up is a good idea? Zefak waved dismissively. Captain, please. Humans were barely above primitive. Their weapons were crude chemical explosives and simple energy discharges. Look at the archaeological evidence. They used projectile weapons. Actual pieces of metal thrown through the air. It's almost adorable how backward they were. But sir, Grimm interjected, the energy readings from the pod are unusual. Unusual how? Well, the power requirements seem excessive for basic life support. Almost like it was designed for something more durable than we expected. Zefak laughed, a sound like grinding gears wrapped in condescension. My dear Grimm, you're overthinking this. Humans were fragile, inefficient creatures who couldn't even survive their own primitive conflicts. Whatever excessive power requirements you're seeing are simply evidence of their technological incompetence. He turned to Borlox with gleaming eyes. Captain, this could be the discovery of the century. A living relic from a failed species. Think of what we could learn. 3 hours later, despite Borlox's increasingly creative objections and several safety protocols that would have made a military lawyer weep, the Cryo Pod sat in the station's medical bay like a metallic coffin with delusions of grandeur. I still think this is monumentally stupid, Borlox grumbled, checking his sidearm for the 4th time in 10 minutes. Captain, your paranoia is showing, Zefak replied, running final diagnostics on the awakening sequence. What's the worst that could happen? A confused primitive human stumbles out and asks where the nearest bathroom is. Grimm hovered over the control panel, his young face bright with anticipation. Power levels are stabilizing, Doctor. The subject's vital signs are, well, they're strong, very strong, actually. Define very strong, specialist. Well, his heart rate is lower than ours, but the pressure readings suggest cardiovascular efficiency that's impossible, really. And his bone density is off the charts. Zefak waved dismissively. Primitive genetics often overcompensate for lack of technology. Initiate the revival sequence. The pod hissed like an angry serpent as ancient mechanisms whirred to life. Steam vented from hidden ports, and the transparent aluminum cover slowly retracted with a sound that suggested it had been waiting centuries for this moment. What emerged was disappointingly ordinary. Marcus Chen sat up slowly, blinking in the harsh medical lighting like someone who had just woken up from a particularly long nap. Middle-aged, slightly graying hair, wearing what appeared to be a simple work jumpsuit. He stretched his arms above his head and yawned. "Oh man," he said, his voice carrying the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. "How long was I out? And please tell me someone remembered to feed Mr. Whiskers." The three aliens exchanged glances. This was their terrifying human specimen. "Greetings, primitive life form," Zefak announced in his most authoritative voice. "I am Dr. Zefak, lead researcher of xenobiology. You have been unconscious for approximately 500 of your Earth years." Marcus blinked slowly, processing this information with the same expression most people reserved for hearing their coffee was ready. 500 years? Huh. Well, that explains why my back doesn't hurt for once. He looked around the medical bay with mild interest. "Nice setup you've got here. Very shiny. You are now a subject of scientific study." Zefak continued, clearly enjoying his moment of intellectual superiority. "We shall conduct various tests to understand your primitive physiology." Tests? Marcus swung his legs over the side of the pod, the movement causing the entire 3-ton medical bed to shift slightly. None of the aliens seemed to notice. "Well, I guess that beats going back to work. What year did you say it was?" "By your calendar, 247, Rim offered helpfully. 2047. Marcus rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "So the evacuation worked? Good. I was starting to worry when they put me under that we might not have enough time to get everyone out." Sefak's eyes lit up. "Evacuation? Yes. Tell us about this evacuation. Were you fleeing your primitive wars?" "Oh no, nothing like that," Marcus replied, standing up and stretching again. The casual movement somehow made the floor vibrate slightly. "I was just a maintenance guy. My job was keeping the reactor core stable while the fleet evacuated the sector. Pretty routine stuff, really." Borlox's military instincts were now screaming. "Reactor core? What kind of reactor?" Marcus looked at him with the patience of someone explaining something obvious. "Fusion reactor, Class 7 antimatter containment system. You know, standard stuff for keeping a dreadnought running." He paused, looking around the medical bay again. "Speaking of which, this is some interesting technology you've got here. Mind if I ask what kind of power source you're running?" "We use quantum energy matrices," Grimm stammered. "Quantum matrices? Neat. Haven't seen those since basic training. Pretty efficient for small-scale applications." Marcus examined the medical equipment with the air of someone browsing a hardware store. "What about weapons systems? Just curious. I always found alien tech fascinating." The word fascinating coming from the human's mouth made all three aliens feel suddenly, inexplicably uncomfortable. "Our weapons are far superior to human technology," Zefak declared, though his voice carried slightly less confidence than before. Marcus nodded agreeably. "I'm sure they are. Mind showing me? I love seeing how different species approach the whole controlled destruction problem." 20 minutes later they stood in the station's armory, a room that usually made visiting dignitaries appropriately impressed and occasionally terrified. Weapon racks lined the walls like metallic Christmas trees, each one gleaming with enough firepower to level a small city. Borlox gestured proudly at a sleek plasma rifle. "This is our standard military issue. Class 9 plasma discharge, capable of punching through 50 centimeters of reinforced titanium alloy." Marcus picked up the weapon with one hand, turning it over like someone examining a particularly interesting paperweight. "Oh, plasma discharge. Classic approach. Very elegant." He hefted it thoughtfully. "Feels a bit light, though. What's the power output?" 12.7 terawatts, Borlox replied, puffing up slightly. "Terawatts?" Marcus's eyebrows rose with polite surprise. "Wow, that's actually pretty impressive for something this compact." He sounded genuinely pleased, like a parent praising a child's crayon drawing. "We always had trouble keeping plasma weapons under 50 terawatts without them getting unwieldy." The three aliens exchanged glances. "Under 50 terawatts? And this?" Zefak interrupted, desperate to regain some intellectual ground, "is our personal energy shield." He activated the device, causing a shimmering barrier to envelop his body, completely impervious to energy weapons. Marcus nodded appreciatively. "Very nice. Personal shields were always tricky. Mind if I—" He reached out and gently tapped the energy barrier with his finger. The shield flickered, sparked, and died with a sound like electronic disappointment. "Oh, sorry about that," Marcus said, looking genuinely apologetic. "I probably should have warned you about static discharge. I always build up a lot of charge after cryo sleep." Grim stared at his readings in disbelief. The shield was rated for direct starship weapon impacts. "Static builds up funny in cryo," Marcus explained helpfully. "Something about the preservation field interfacing with human bioelectricity. Never did understand the science behind it." Zefak's scientific pride was now thoroughly bruised. "Very well, human. If you think our technology is so quaint, perhaps you'd care to demonstrate your own species' supposed combat capabilities." Marcus looked genuinely surprised by the hostile tone. "Combat capabilities? Oh, I wouldn't know anything about that. I was just maintenance crew, remember? Non-combat personnel." He paused thoughtfully. "But sure, I guess I could show you some basic training stuff. Nothing fancy." "Excellent." Zefak pointed toward the armory's reinforced testing range. "Show us what human training looks like." Marcus walked over to the testing area, which featured various targets and obstacles designed to challenge the galaxy's most elite soldiers. He looked around with the air of someone trying to figure out how to work an unfamiliar coffee machine. You don't happen to have anything more challenging than this, do you? I mean, this looks like the obstacle course they used for new recruits back in basic training." Borlox's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "That's a Class Alpha military training facility. It's rated for special forces." "Oh, well, I'm sure it's great for, Marcus gently pushed against what was labeled as an immovable barrier. The 3-meter-thick wall of reinforced composite material shifted backward with a grinding sound. "This seems a bit wobbly." He continued his casual examination of the training course, and with each gentle touch, supposedly indestructible equipment began failing in ways that defied physics. Steel targets bent like cardboard. Barrier walls developed cracks just from his presence. A security drone that approached to investigate his unauthorized access simply shut down when he patted it on its sensor array. "Oh, this is interesting," Marcus said, picking up what the manual described as an unbreakable tension rod. A solid bar of military-grade alloy designed to test the grip strength of powered combat suits. He bent it into the shape of a pretzel while continuing his conversation. "You know, it's funny how different species develop different material sciences. On Earth, we had to make everything pretty sturdy, because, well, humans tend to be hard on equipment. The bent pretzel had once been capable of supporting the weight of a battle tank. The weather's nice on this station," Marcus continued conversationally, now absent-mindedly twisting the pretzel into what appeared to be a small sculpture of a flower. "Good climate control. Reminds me of the Dreadnought's civilian quarters. Much better than the military sections. Those were always kept a bit harsh to toughen up the crew." Grim made a choking sound. "Civilian quarters? Oh yeah, civilian areas were always more comfortable. Military personnel had to deal with heavier gravity, lower oxygen, that sort of thing. Character building, they called it." Marcus set down his impromptu metal flower sculpture. "This was fun. Thanks for showing me around." The 3 aliens stared at him, then at their ruined indestructible equipment, then back at him. Zefak's voice was barely a whisper. "Character building? Oh, you know how military types are," Marcus said with a chuckle, completely oblivious to the existential crisis unfolding around him. "Always trying to make things harder than they need to be. The gravity in the combat sections was cranked up to about 3 times what we maintenance folks dealt with. And don't get me started on the atmospheric pressure. They kept it thick enough that you could practically swim through it." Morlox's legs gave out and he slumped against a weapon rack. Three times normal gravity. "Standard procedure during the Extinction Wars," Marcus explained, settling into what was clearly a comfortable topic for him. "I had to keep the soldiers in peak condition because, well, we were fighting something that made regular warfare look like a friendly disagreement." "Extinction Wars," Grim squeaked. "Yeah, nasty business. Started about 50 years before I went under. Something showed up from outside the galaxy. Never did figure out exactly what they were, but they were problematic." Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. "Command decided the best strategy was a fighting retreat. Evacuate entire sectors, fall back to more defensible positions, that sort of thing." Zefak found his voice, though it came out several octaves higher than usual. "And you You fought in these wars? Marcus laughed, a sound that would haunt alien nightmares for generations to come.
Me?
Oh no! I failed the physical requirements for military service. Too weak, they said. Couldn't handle the enhanced training regimens. He gestured to himself self-deprecatingly, barely made it through civilian emergency response certification. The silence that followed could have been used to preserve food. Too weak, Orlox whispered. Grim made a sound like a balloon losing air. Children's? Toys? Oh sure. Kids need sturdy playthings, you know? Can't have them breaking everything they touch. Though I notice your military gear is actually a bit more fragile than our standard children's toys were, probably a different design philosophy. Marcus nodded approvingly, more emphasis on elegance over durability. Very artistic approach. What? Zephic's voice cracked like an adolescent's. What kind of cryo pod were you in? Oh, this old thing. Marcus patted the pod affectionately. Standard civilian emergency shelter. Lowest grade equipment they had. The good pods, the military ones, those could keep someone under for thousands of years and wake them up ready for combat. This little guy was just designed to get non-essential personnel out of the way during evacuations. He looked around the medical bay with renewed interest. Actually, I'm pretty impressed it lasted this long. These emergency pods were basically disposable. Use once, throw away. The fact that you managed to wake me up after 500 years says good things about your technical skills. The three aliens stared at him with the expression of beings who had just realized they were insects examining what they thought was a pebble, only to discover it was actually a sleeping dragon. Non-essential, Orlox mumbled. Disposable equipment, Zephac added faintly. Failed military physical. Rim contributed weakly. Marcus beamed at them with genuine warmth. Exactly. Just goes to show you never know where life will take you. One day you're a failed recruit, doing maintenance work. The next you're having a fascinating conversation with aliens 500 years in the future. He stretched again, and somewhere in the station's superstructure, metal groaned softly. So what happened to the rest of my species anyway? The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to drop. Three alien minds collectively realized they had spent their entire careers studying what they thought was the apex of galactic civilization, only to discover they had been examining the fingernail clippings of giants. We thought you were extinct, Grim whispered. Marcus's face lit up with relief. Oh, thank goodness. That means the evacuation worked perfectly. We probably withdrew to the outer spiral arms or maybe even the Magellanic clouds. Smart move, really. Give whatever we were fighting plenty of empty space to lose interest in. But the ruins, Zephyr protested weakly. The destroyed colonies. Oh, those were just the outer settlements we had to abandon during the retreat. Standard scorched earth tactics. Can't leave infrastructure behind for the enemy to use. Marcus nodded approvingly. Military probably moved everyone to the backup colonies by now. The backup colonies. Of course there were backup colonies. Well, Marcus said, standing and brushing imaginary dust off his jumpsuit. I should probably head home. Don't want to worry anyone. Could you point me toward the nearest human settlement? Borlox's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. We don't know where. Well, that's okay. I can probably find my way. Humans are pretty good at leaving breadcrumbs. Marcus looked around hopefully. You wouldn't happen to have a spare environmental suit, would you? Just something basic for the trip. 10 minutes later they watched through the observation deck as Marcus floated away from the station, wearing their emergency suit, which he had somehow modified during the fitting process to run more efficiently than their primary life support systems. He was jogging through space, in a suit rated for short-term emergencies, treating vacuum like a pleasant morning stroll. Oh, and folks, his voice crackled cheerfully over the comm system. You might want to avoid sectors 7 through 12. That's where we had some of our heavier military installations, even abandoned. Those places can be pretty dangerous for civilian traffic. They watched until he vanished among the stars, moving at a pace that suggested he was late for a casual appointment rather than undertaking an impossible journey through the void. Zephic, Warlock said finally, his voice hollow. Remind me to update our threat assessment protocols. To include humans? To exclude everything else? Zephic stared out at the stars, wondering what manner of cosmic horror had been terrifying enough to make humanity Humanity, pack up entire galactic sectors and run away. He decided, quite firmly, that he never wanted to find out.